I've worked at Harrow and Sons Funeral Home for 11 years now. That's long enough to stop flinching at the sight of death, long enough to perfect the art of speaking to grieving families without offering empty platitudes, and long enough to understand that some rules exist for reasons that have nothing to do with state regulations or professional courtesy. My name is David Marsh. I'm 42 years old, divorced, no children. I came to this work the way most people do, by accident, by necessity, or by some combination of the two that feels too much like fate to examine closely. My father was a mortician, his father before him. I spent my childhood in rooms that smelled of formaldehyde and lilies, learning to be quiet in hallways where silence was a form of respect. When my father died, suddenly, a heart attack at 59, I was 27 and working as an accountant in Providence. I hated it. The fluorescent lights, the spreadsheets, the artificial cheerfulness of office birthday parties. Within 6 months of his funeral, I'd enrolled in mortuary school. My mother said I was running toward grief instead of away from it. Maybe she was right. Harrow and Sons sits at the edge of a town called Millbrook, about 40 minutes outside of Burlington, Vermont. It's an old building, red brick, built in 1897 according to the cornerstone. 3 stories, though we only use 2. The 3rd floor has been sealed since before I started working here. Mr. Harrow, the current owner, grandson of the founder, told me it was due to structural concerns, but I've seen the building inspection reports. The structure is sound. I don't ask about it anymore. The funeral home operates much like any other. We handle viewings, cremations, burials. We work with churches, synagogues, the occasional humanist celebrant. We coordinate with florists and caterers. We file death certificates and insurance paperwork. We prepare bodies with care and professionalism. We exist in that strange space between medical facility and sacred ground, and we do our work with the understanding that we are the last people to touch someone before they leave this world entirely. But there are rules at Harrow and Sons. 17 of them, to be exact. They're printed on laminated cards that we keep in our pockets at all times. Mr. Harrow gave me mine on my first day, along with my employee handbook and building keys. He handed it to me in his office, which smells perpetually of pipe tobacco and old paper, and he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "These are non-negotiable," he said. "Not suggestions, not guidelines, rules. You break them, you're gone. No second chances, no explanations. Do you understand?" I told him I did. At the time, I assumed it was about liability, about maintaining the dignity of the deceased, about professional standards. I assumed wrong. The rules seemed reasonable at first. Mundane even. Rule 1. Never prop open the basement door. It must remain closed and locked when not in use. Rule 2. All preparation room work must be completed before sunset. No exceptions. Rule 3. If you hear knocking from inside a closed casket, do not open it. Contact Mr. Harrow immediately. Rule 4. The viewing rooms must be locked between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. Do not enter them during this time. Rule 5. If you see a person in the building who is not staff or an expected visitor, do not approach them. Leave the room calmly and report it. Rule 6. Never work alone in the embalming suite after dark. Rule 7. If the phone rings 3 times and stops, do not answer if it rings again immediately after. The list went on. Some rules made obvious sense: professional boundaries, safety protocols, respect for the deceased. Others seemed oddly specific. I remember reading Rule 12 during my lunch break on that first day. If you smell roses in the basement hallway, leave immediately and do not return for at least 30 minutes. I'd laughed a little. Roses seemed like an odd thing to worry about in a funeral home, where flowers were a constant presence. My training supervisor was a woman named Claire Voss. She was 56, had worked at Harrow and Sons for 23 years, and had the kind of calm competence that made even the most difficult family interactions seem manageable. She taught me embalming techniques, restorative art, how to position bodies for viewing, how to operate the crematory. She also taught me the rules. "You'll think some of them are strange," she said one afternoon as we worked together in the preparation room, carefully setting the features of an elderly man who died of pneumonia. "You'll be tempted to test them or to ask why. Don't. Just follow them. Every single one exists because someone before us learned the hard way what happens when you don't. I wanted to ask what she meant by the hard way, but something in her tone suggested the conversation was over. For the first few months, the rules were easy to follow because they aligned with the natural rhythm of the work. We did our preparation during daylight hours because that's when we had full staff. We kept the basement door locked because we stored hazardous chemicals down there. We locked the viewing rooms at night because, well, why wouldn't we? The building was old, in a quiet area. Security was basic common sense. But then small things started happening that made the rules feel less like policy and more like protection. The first incident I witnessed personally occurred about 4 months into my employment. It was a Tuesday evening in late October. We'd had a viewing that afternoon. A 40-year-old woman, cancer, heartbreaking, and I'd stayed late to finish paperwork and clean the viewing room. Claire had left at 5, as she always did. Mr. Harrow was in his office. I was alone on the ground floor. I was vacuuming the carpet in viewing room B when I heard it. A sound from the hallway. Footsteps. Slow, measured. The distinct click of hard-soled shoes on the old wooden floors that ran through the older parts of the building. I turned off the vacuum and listened. The footsteps continued. They were coming from the direction of the main entrance, moving toward the back of the building. My first thought was that someone had come in without ringing the bell. A late visitor, maybe, or a delivery person. But when I stepped into the hallway, it was empty. The footsteps had stopped. The front door was locked, dead-bolted from the inside. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the settling sounds of the old building, and then I remembered Rule 5. If you see a person in the building who is not staff or an expected visitor, do not approach them. Leave the room calmly and report it. But I hadn't seen anyone. I'd only heard footsteps. Did the rule apply to sounds? I wasn't sure. I felt foolish standing there in the empty hallway, debating the semantics of a workplace rule. But I also felt something else. A coldness in my chest, a prickling awareness at the back of my neck. The hallway looked wrong somehow. The shadows were too deep. The air felt thick. I went upstairs to Mr. Harrow's office and knocked. "Come in." I opened the door. Mr. Harrow was at his desk, writing something in a large leather-bound ledger. He looked up at me, and I saw immediate understanding in his eyes. "What did you experience?" he asked. "Not what's wrong, or can I help you?" He knew. "Footsteps," I said, "in the first-floor hallway." But no one was there. He set down his pen. "Did you follow them?" "No. I came straight here." He nodded, something like approval crossing his face. "Good. You can go home for the evening, David." "I'll lock up." "What was?" "Go home," he repeated. His voice was kind but firm. "We'll talk tomorrow." I left. I drove home to my small apartment above a bakery on Main Street, and I sat at my kitchen table for an hour, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. But I knew I hadn't. The footsteps had been real. And Mr. Harrow's reaction had confirmed that whatever I'd heard was not only real but expected. The next morning, he called me into his office before I'd even clocked in. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I sat. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You did well yesterday. Following the rules when you're uncertain is just as important as following them when you're sure. I want you to understand something, David. This building is old. It has been a funeral home for 128 years. In that time, thousands of people have passed through these rooms. Thousands of souls have made their transition here. Most move on, but not all. Some linger. Some are confused. Some are angry. Some are afraid. The rules exist to maintain boundaries, to keep the living and the dead in their proper places." I felt my throat go dry. "Are you saying the building is haunted?" "I'm saying the building is occupied," he corrected. "Haunting implies malice, chaos, something uncontrolled. This is not that. We have an understanding, the dead and us. We respect their space, they respect ours. The rules maintain that balance. Break them and the balance tips. Do you believe in what I'm telling you?" I thought about my father, about the strange comfort I'd always felt in funeral homes, about the way death had never frightened me the way it frightened others. "Yes," I said. I believe you. Good. Then we won't have problems. We didn't. For years, we didn't. I followed the rules without question, and the work continued smoothly. I heard things occasionally. Whispers in empty rooms, doors closing on their own, the creak of floorboards where no one walked. But I never felt threatened. The presence in the building, whatever it was, felt neutral. Watchful, maybe, but not hostile. Claire told me once that she thought of them as guardians. They're making sure we do right by the dead, she said. Making sure we don't forget our purpose. I came to understand the specific reasons behind certain rules through experience and observation. Rule 2, all preparation work completed before sunset, existed because something about the darkness changed the atmosphere in the embalming suite. The few times I'd worked past dusk, always with Claire, never alone, never breaking Rule 6, I'd noticed it. The shadows didn't fall naturally. They pooled in corners, thick and textured, and the sound of our work seemed muffled, as though the room itself were pressing in. Claire worked faster after dark, her movements efficient and sharp. We didn't speak. We finished quickly and left. Rule 3, the knocking from inside caskets, I witnessed once. A viewing was scheduled for 2 p.m. The deceased was a teenage boy, a car accident, a closed casket service because of the injuries. At noon, as I was setting up the viewing room with flowers and a guest book, I heard it. 3 deliberate knocks from inside the casket. I froze. The sound came again. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, measured, impossible. The boy was dead. I had helped prepare him. I had seen the extent of his injuries. There was no possibility of life. I backed out of the room and called Mr. Harrow. He came down immediately, listened at the casket for a moment, then nodded. I'll handle it, he said. Go take your lunch break. Don't come back to this room until the family arrives. I never learned what he did, but the viewing went smoothly. The family never knew, and I understood that some rules protected us from knowledge as much as from danger. Rule 7, the phone ringing 3 times and stopping, happened regularly enough that I stopped noticing it. But one evening, in my 2nd year, I was alone at the front desk covering for our receptionist, and the phone rang. 3 times. Then silence. I waited. It rang again immediately. Without thinking, I reached for it. My hand was an inch from the receiver when Claire appeared in the doorway, moving faster than I'd ever seen her move, and slammed her hand down on mine. No, she said. Her face was pale. Never. The phone rang and rang. 20 times. 30. Then stopped. Who was calling? I asked. No one who should be able to reach us, she said. No one living. I didn't touch the phone again during those sequences. None of us did. The rules became second nature. I stopped thinking of them as unusual. They were simply part of the job, like washing instruments or filing death certificates. I trained new employees the way Claire had trained me. Calmly, clearly, with the expectation of complete compliance. Most people adapted well. A few didn't last. They'd break a small rule, thinking it didn't matter, thinking they knew better. They'd leave on their own within days, unsettled by things they couldn't explain. Mr. Harrow never had to fire anyone. The building did it for him. My life outside of work was quiet. I dated occasionally, but never seriously. I had a few friends, mostly people I'd known since childhood, but I saw them infrequently. I read a lot. I took long walks. I was content in my solitude. The funeral home felt more like home than my apartment did. I understood the work, the silence, the weight of it. I was good at it. Then, in my 9th year at Harrow & Sons, something changed. It started with Rule 12. The roses. I smelled them on a Wednesday morning in March. I was in the basement retrieving supplies, embalming fluid, cavity chemicals, clean linens. The basement at Harrow & Sons is not a pleasant space. It's utilitarian, concrete floors and metal shelving, lit by fluorescent tubes that hum and flicker. We keep it organized and clean, but it has the feel of a place that doesn't want to be inhabited. I'd always moved quickly down there, not out of fear but out of instinct. That morning, as I was loading bottles onto a cart, the smell hit me. Roses. Not the pleasant, subtle scent of fresh flowers. This was overwhelming, cloying. The smell of roses left too long in a hot room, starting to rot, filled my throat and nose. I looked around. There were no flowers in the basement. No air fresheners, no sachets. Nothing. Rule 12. If you smell roses in the basement hallway, leave immediately and do not return for at least 30 minutes. I left the cart and walked quickly to the stairs. The smell followed me. At the top of the stairs, I shut the door and locked it. My hands were shaking slightly. I went to the break room and sat down, breathing slowly. 30 minutes. I set a timer on my phone. Claire found me there 20 minutes later. She took one look at my face and said, "Basement? Roses?" She nodded. "It's been a while. Months since the last time. Did you leave right away?" "Yes." "Good." She sat down across from me. "It's a warning. Something's restless down there. Could be we brought in someone who's having trouble letting go. Could be something else. Mr. Harrow will check the records, make sure we've done everything properly. But you did the right thing. What happens if you don't leave?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. "I don't know. No one who's stayed has been able to tell us." My timer went off. I returned to the basement. The smell was gone. I retrieved my supplies and finished the day's work without incident. But something had shifted. The building felt more alert, more present. Over the next few weeks, small violations of the natural order began to occur. Doors we'd locked would be found unlocked in the morning. The thermostat in the viewing rooms would be adjusted overnight, lowered to uncomfortable temperatures. Once, I found all the chairs in viewing room turned to face the wall. We reset everything, followed the rules, said nothing to the families we served. But among the staff there was a tension. Mr. Harrow spent more time in his office with the door closed. I saw him once, late in the evening, standing in the third-floor stairwell, looking up at the sealed door at the top. His face was troubled. "Is everything all right?" I asked. He turned to me. "We're managing. But stay vigilant, David. Follow the rules exactly. Don't deviate even slightly. Has something changed?" "Something's always changing," he said. "Death isn't static. The boundaries we maintain require constant attention. Sometimes they thin. Sometimes pressure builds. We're in one of those periods now." "What causes it?" "Many things. An unusual number of violent deaths. A suicide. Someone dying with unfinished business. Or sometimes no reason at all. Sometimes the dead simply push back against being contained." He walked away before I could ask anything else. The incident that made everything concrete happened on a Thursday night in April. I was working late, preparing a body for an early morning viewing. The deceased was an elderly woman, 93, peacefully deceased in her sleep. An easy preparation, no trauma, no complications. But I was behind schedule because we'd had 2 intakes that day, and I needed to finish before I could go home. It was 7:30 p.m., past sunset. I was alone in the embalming suite. I realized my mistake the moment I looked at the clock. Rule 6. Never work alone in the embalming suite after dark. I stopped mid-stitch. I'd been closing the incisions and looked around the room. Everything was as it should be. The body on the table, my instruments laid out, the hum of the ventilation system. Nothing seemed wrong, but the air felt different, heavier. And in the corner of the room, the shadows were wrong again. They moved slightly, contracting and expanding like something breathing. I set down my needle driver and stepped back from the table. I needed to leave now, but the body was unfinished, the incisions still open, fluid still draining. Couldn't leave her like this. It was disrespectful, unprofessional. I hesitated, weighing the rule against my responsibility to the dead. The shadows in the corner moved closer. I heard breathing, not mine. Slow, ragged breaths coming from somewhere behind me. I turned. Nothing. The door was closed. I was alone with the body, but the breathing continued. I made my decision. I crossed the room in 3 strides, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway. I pulled the door shut behind me and stood there, heart pounding, waiting for something to follow me. Nothing did. The hallway was silent. Normal. The breathing had stopped. I went upstairs to Mr. Harrow's office. The light was still on. I knocked. "Come in." I entered and told him what had happened. He listened without interruption, his expression grave. "You did the right thing," he said when I finished. "The body will be fine until morning. We'll finish the preparation together at first light." "I'm sorry. I lost track of time. I didn't mean to break the rule." "I know, but intention doesn't matter to them. The rules are the boundary. Cross it even accidentally and they respond. You weren't hurt. You left when you realized. That's what matters." "But David, I need you to understand something. The rules are getting harder to follow. The margin for error is shrinking. We're approaching something. A threshold. I can feel it." "What kind of threshold?" He was quiet for a long moment. "The dead outnumber the living in this building. We serve them, prepare them, send them on. But some don't leave. They accumulate. And this building, old as it is, has accumulated many. Most are peaceful, content to simply exist in the in-between. But there are others. Older presences. Things that were here before the funeral home, maybe before the town. They're usually dormant. But when the boundary weakens, when rules are broken, they wake. And they're hungry." A chill ran through me. Hungry for what? For life. For warmth. For the chance to cross back over. He met my eyes. "The rules don't just protect us from ghosts, David. They protect us from something much older. Something that understands the space between life and death better than we ever could. Something that wants out." I left his office and drove home, but I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen window and watched the sun come up, thinking about everything he'd said. When I returned to the funeral home at 6 a.m., Mr. Harrow was already there. Together, we finished preparing the woman's body. The embalming suite felt normal in the daylight. Neutral. Safe. But I noticed something as we worked. There were scratches on the inside of the door. Long, deep gouges in the wood. Fresh enough that splinters still clung to the edges. They hadn't been there yesterday. Something had tried to get out. After that, I was more careful. We all were. Claire created a checklist system to make sure no one lost track of time. We installed additional locks on the basement door. We began working in pairs whenever possible, even during the day. Mr. Harrow hired an additional staff member, a young woman named Sarah who had training in both mortuary science and, though she never said it directly, something else. Something that involved salt and iron and words in languages I didn't recognize. She walked the building every morning before we opened, and every evening before we locked up, her lips moving silently, her hands touching door frames and window sills. "Reinforcement," she explained once when I asked. "The boundaries need maintenance, like sealing a crack before it becomes a leak." "How long have you been doing this kind of work?" I asked. "Long enough to know that places like this are necessary. The dead need space to transition, but that space needs to be controlled, guarded. Otherwise, it becomes a door that swings both ways." The rules expanded. Mr. Harrow added 3 more to the laminated cards. Rule 18. If you see writing on the walls that was not there before, photograph it and report it immediately. Do not attempt to clean it. Rule 19. Do not accept gifts, objects, or personal items from anyone you cannot verify as living. Rule 20. If you feel suddenly, overwhelmingly tired while in the basement or on the first floor after dark, leave the building immediately and call for help. Each new rule came with a story, though Mr. Harrow didn't always share them. I learned Rule 18's origin from Claire. A previous employee, years before I arrived, had found words scratched into the wall of the basement hallway. Names, dozens of them. He'd painted over them without telling anyone. 2 days later, those names appeared in the viewing rooms during a service. Written in condensation on the windows. The families saw. There were questions. Investigations. The employee left and never returned to funeral work. "The names are still under the paint," Claire said. "We leave them there. Covering them was the mistake. Pretending they weren't real. The building taught us. It was patient in its lessons, but absolute in its expectations. Follow the rules and you were safe. Break them and you learned why they existed. I'm in my 11th year now. Claire retired 6 months ago. She hugged me goodbye on her last day and said, "You're steady, David. You'll be fine. Just don't forget, this work is a contract. We provide service, they provide passage. Keep the balance." I'm senior staff now. I train new employees. I hand them their laminated rule cards and I tell them what Mr. Harrow told me. These are non-negotiable. Not suggestions. Not guidelines. Rules. I watch their faces as they read. Some understand immediately. Others think it's a joke or liability theater or superstition. Those don't last. Sarah is still here. Mr. Harrow is talking about retirement. He's 68 now and the work is taking a toll. He's asked me if I'd be interested in taking over the business. I told him I'd think about it. But I already know the answer. This place is part of me now. I understand its rhythms, its needs, its moods. I understand that what we do here is more than prepare bodies and comfort families. We maintain a threshold. We keep the door between worlds from swinging open. Last week, I smelled roses in the basement again. I left immediately, waited 30 minutes, returned. But this time, the smell didn't fully dissipate. It's still there, faint but persistent. Sarah noticed it too. She's increased her morning and evening walks. Mr. Harrow has been spending time on the 3rd floor landing again, staring at the sealed door. "Something's coming," he said to me yesterday. "I can feel it building. Pressure. We'll need to be very, very careful in the coming months." I asked him what he thought it was. "I don't know, but the building is trying to tell us something. The roses, the cold spots, the scratches. It's a language. We just have to learn to read it before it's too late." This morning, I arrived at 5 a.m. to prepare for an early intake. The front door was unlocked. I know I locked it last night. I checked the security log. No one had entered or left. But the door was open, just slightly, and when I stepped inside, I felt it immediately. The air was different, charged, expectant. All the doors on the 1st floor were open, every single one. The viewing rooms, the consulting rooms, the preparation suite, the basement door. Open. Waiting. I closed them one by one, checking each room. Nothing was disturbed. Nothing was missing. But in viewing room A, the chairs were turned to face the wall again. And in the basement hallway, when I went down to lock the door from the inside, I saw new writing on the wall. Not scratched this time. Written in something dark and wet that I didn't want to identify. It was a single sentence. "The door upstairs is thin." I took a photograph. I locked the basement. I called Mr. Harrow. He's on his way now. I'm sitting at the front desk, writing this, waiting for him to arrive. The building is quiet. The sun is coming up outside, pale light filtering through the old windows. Everything looks normal, but I can feel it. The pressure Sarah and Mr. Harrow talked about is here, present, building. Something is coming. Something that has been waiting for a very long time. And I think the rules, all 20 of them, might not be enough to stop it. The phone just rang 3 times and stopped. I'm waiting to see if it rings again. My hand is in my pocket, touching the laminated card, reminding myself what to do, reminding myself that the rules exist for a reason, and that reason is walking through this building right now, testing the boundaries, looking for the weak point. I can smell roses, faint but growing stronger. It's not coming from the basement this time. It's coming from above me, from the 3rd floor, from behind the sealed door that hasn't been opened in decades. The phone is ringing again. I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to wait for Mr. Harrow. I'm going to do my job. But I need you to understand something. If you ever work in a place like this, a funeral home, a hospital, anywhere that death is a constant presence, and they give you rules that seem strange or arbitrary or overly specific, you follow them. You follow them exactly. Because those rules were written in response to something real. Something that someone else learned the hard way. The roses are getting stronger. The phone stopped ringing. And I just heard footsteps on the 3rd floor. Slow, measured, coming down. I'm going to lock the front door now. I'm going to wait outside for Mr. Harrow. Because there's one rule that hasn't been written on the card yet. But I'm learning it right now. When the dead stop following the rules, the living need to leave.